Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Gittin daf Chav Zayin. We're going to begin on the top of Chav Zayin but Aleph by the new Mishnah. Says the Masnisin. Maybe get, so you have a shliach that brings a get. However, unfortunately, he didn't do his job so well. And he ends up losing it. Now, let's say Matzul alter. Let's say he finds the get immediately. We'll discuss what that means. What does that mean? Alter. Kosher. Then it's okay. However, Imla Apostle, says Rashi, what happens if, let's say, someone else had the get similar to his, and maybe he lost it, and he's going to pick up someone else's get, and therefore it's going to be a apostle get. So therefore we don't want him to use that get if he didn't retrieve it immediately. However, Matzu b'chfitza, let's say he finds it, chfitza, Rashi is in a kli, some type of a vessel, says Rashi, Yesh siman b'kli shu shlo, he knows for sure it's his. So if that's the case, or for that matter, o bodeluskama imakir kosher. So again, if he finds it in a kli, or in some type of manner that there is a clear siman, then in that situation it's kosher, which is mashma, even if, let's say, he found it later on, but the reality is it doesn't matter because you know it wasn't someone else, because there is a clear siman. We'll discuss exactly a siman muvhak and all these different dinim again on today's daf. Says the Gemara, or minhu. Now, the Mishnah makes a distinction between if it was found immediately or after a long period of time. But apparently this is not the case, because we learn elsewhere that matzah Gittin nashim. Let's say you find, and this is the key line, obviously, a get, which means it was lost and now it's found, b'shchuri avadim, or some document of emancipation for slaves, or a daidiki, Rashi says, is savoy shchimira. It's like a last will and testament. Matanos, gifts, which is referring to a gift of a healthy person. The shovarim, or some type of receipt, harzel yachser. We do not want you to give it back. Don't give it back to the husband. Again, we're talking about, let's say, the get. Don't give the get back to the husband. Don't give it back to the wife. So too when it comes to shechor, when it comes to all of them. And what is the reason for that? Says the Gemara, because shani omer, I say, ksubim hayu. Yeah, they were written for these purposes. However, nimachalayan, sholitnam, maybe they changed their mind, and because they changed their mind in the interim, they have the ability to change their mind, and we discussed if that's the case by all these things. So, ha omer tenu, what if he said, give it? So, noisim hiluzman meruba. In the event that we can verify that he said, give it, so we say that even if, let's say, it got lost for a long period of time, it doesn't make any difference, because once he says tenu, then we already say it has a different din. It's like already, like it's like already given, if you will. So therefore, because of that, even if it was found much later on, nonetheless you can give it. Now this is referring to Gittin. We just said in our Mishnah that there's a distinction between finding it right away, that's kosher, but if it's after a certain amount of time, then no. If it's not alter, so it should be apostle. Over here, if he said v'nosan, it's good. So how do we understand this? So Amar Rabba, we're going to see Rabba and Rab Zera. Here we have Rabba, Lukasha, Kamba makam shasharis matsuyos, Kamba makam shen hashiris matsuyos. We have to look at probabilities over here. So when it says Rashi, if we're dealing with a place in which there is a lot of movement, there's a lot of traveling, there's a lot of wagons, like in our Mishnah, then it's only going to be kosher alter. However, if it's Uzman Meruba, let's just distinguish it that way. If it's not alter, then it's going to be puzzle, because then there's a chance, as Rashi Shema, because maybe, because there's so many people, maybe this get belongs to someone else. Now the truth is, even if you want to tell me that there's a lot of people, you have to have these two qualifications. Not only is there a lot of travel, but it has to be, because the get mentions the name of the man, the woman, it has to be that there's two people with the exact same names in the same city, which is also stipulated at the time where the get was written. Because otherwise, so what that there's constant movement? But if these names are so unusual, which nowadays we write numerous additional nicknames, so it makes it again much more specific. So the reality is, even again Lizman Meruba, we're going to say it's going to be okay, even if there are a lot of people, because if there's not Shtei Yosef and Shimon Be'irachas. Says Rashi, Daha de'uki rabba b'makam sheshes matsuyos, that it's only kosher if it's altar found. Has to be the same people. There's a potential that it could be the other guy. But says Rashi, if there is no establishment of numerous people with this name, there are two people, and Dilma Isnahu, we're not going to say, oh, well, maybe there is. We just don't know who that person is. Right? So we're not going to go that far. Now, so therefore, that's the chiluk. However, if it's a place where just no one travels, so if you find it later on, it's probably yours, because the likelihood that there was another person that dropped it is very unlikely, because it's in Hasheros Matsuyos. So that's how we make this distinction. If you don't say this, that Rabbah's, says Rashi, if you don't say these two qualifications, we're going to end up having a different issue. The Kasha Rabbah to Rabbah, we're going to end up having a stira in the interpretation of Rabbah. Dahahu Gita, because we have a story of a get. Dishtachach Beidina. It was found actually in the courthouse, the Rav Huna. That's what happened. It was found there. It must have fallen down, and then they found it. And Rashi says, "V'huchsakushne Yosef and Shimon ba'oseir." There was no establishment that there were these two people. Now again, this get may have been sitting around there for a long time, but in the same city, there was no chazaka that there was these two types of people. The Habik Sibben was written on the get, Bishvire Masa Di'al Rachis Nahara. So it specifically mentioned this particular city. We're concerned that there's two Shavire. Says Rashi, V'shema lo zehud shenafel mezeh. So, maybe it's referring to a different place. V'yomer le Rav Chistel Rabba puk v'ayin ba. So he said to Rabba, why don't you go out and let's investigate into this matter. Lo urta boilo minach Rav Huna. And then later on, this question was posed. So Nafik, he went out, Dak v'ashkan, he found it not in kol masi beis in hare ze yachzer. That when it comes, it's brought down by Matzia, this is what he found, that kol masa beistin, says Rashi, hamaitzi shtar mekuyim bebeistin. If you have a validated shtar in beistin, lo yachzer, says Rashi, lo yichashin and shema enu zeh. We're not concerned that this is not his. Now this place, a lot of people go because they're going to court, so there's constant movement and traveling, and also a lot of documents there. The kapasha yachzer, but nonetheless we said harizeh yachzer, that you could still give it back. Now, why could you give it back? It must be because we're pretty sure that it belongs to that person. Alma ihok sakushne Yosef ben Shimon be'irachas in lo. So we see you need both, namely sharis matsuyos and a chazaka of the same names in the same place to not return the get, or in this case, this document. But here, it only had one of these two qualifications, so that's the reason why he returned it. That's the explanation. Fine. Avid Rabba Uvda Bahu Gita. So now we have a further discussion that Rabba did this regarding the get. And he did exactly regarding this din as it was found a get in a bekisna, in a storage house. And that's what he did, kishmaise. What is that? What did he do? Says Rashi, di Amar, he says tartib inan. Again, you need both. So he gave this document back to the claimant. So again, because you need both, and because both qualifications of Sharis Matsuyos and Shnei Yosef ben Yosef ben Shimon birachas didn't take place, so therefore he can give it back because we can assume that belongs to him. Some say we're talking about a situation where it's a location where they would actually soak the flax. So in that situation, because that's where they do this, there's not a lot of people that go into that area. Even though, let's say there are two people with that exact same name, there's not a lot of people that go into that area. So that could be the reason. Maybe it's a place where they sell it, namely in the marketplace, where there are a lot of people, even though there's a lot of caravans, meaning there's a lot of people, but because there wasn't a chazak of two people in that same city, that's the reason why he was lenient. Question 13. He did regarding this document that was found in the flax house, and he returned it. So my shmaise de Rabba, again, you need both. My ovid kavase. So this is how he just writes it. She tasa de inan tarti shayar tarti shayaros mitsuyos umachsakinan loish kishne mishne yosef ben shimon kedei lochosh v'hasam techziru taveya doi havi hasam el chada. Which one? So it depends how you read it, but it doesn't make any difference. The point is you need both in order to be chayish and not give back the get. Or in any of these, any document for that matter. Reb Zera Rami Mastis and a Brisa. So Reb Zera ends up asking a stira from a Mishnah to a Brisa, and Umishane, and he ends up providing an answer to his point that he asks. Okay. Hameviget v'yavit. So our Mishnah, the shliach made a mistake. He lost the get, and then he finds it. So imatzel alter kosher. If he finds it right away, it's good. Ima apostle. If he doesn't find it right away, it's apostle. So that's the Mishnah. Or minhu, I have a question. Matzah get isha b'shok. A person finds, this is the brisa. A person finds a get isha in the marketplace, which l'chayr is shashiris mitzuyos. Bizman shabal maide, at the time when the husband agrees that he wrote her the get, yasal isha. He can give the get to the woman because there's really nothing to worry about. We're going to assume, again, this is fine. This was the get, even though it's in the shuk. Let's say the husband says, I didn't write it, I didn't give her the get. Lo yachser lo lazeh lo lazeh. We don't give it back to the husband or to her. Says Rashi, maybe he already gave it, so we don't want him to hold on to the get. And maybe it fell from her hands, but she really should be divorced. And when it comes to his hands, then let the Edi Masira come and testify she actually got divorced. However, he may end up saying that I paid you back your ksuba already. Shahaitzas haget bebeistin utanan hamaitz get. A person takes out a get ve'eni imo ksuba goy v'ksubasa. Then you can collect the ksuba. The chivun hu leporaya, he has obligated to pay it back. When nasnuli as a get, he can say, well, they gave me the get kadeshul tasva tigva, so I don't have to. She's not going to collect again. So this could be almost like a trick. He could say, oh yeah, the reason why you gave me the get back is in order that she should not collect me again, because the din is that if you have a get without, if she has a get without a ksuba, he has to pay the ksuba. So he can say, well, we have no ksuba, and the reason why the basin gave me this get is so that she's not going to collect from me twice. He may never pay. So therefore, we don't want him to get this, because we're not concerned about divorce, because we can always have Edi Masira come and testify that in fact that they were divorced. The problem is the ksuba. So if he holds on to if we give him the ksuba, then she's maybe going to end up not getting her money. So why can't we give it to her? She's divorced, right? Right? The problem is we don't want her to get remarried, because she really may not be divorced. Maybe she really didn't get it, because in fact the husband is saying, I never gave it to her. So therefore we don't want her to hold on to it either. So therefore, Ein habal moide lo yaksu lo zeh lo zeh. Ha, as we continue to Chav Zayin Amud Beis, ha bizman shabal moide. However, as we said, if the husband admits and says, yes, I gave it, it's not a problem, so what do we say? What's the din? Yes, yaksu isha, we give it to her. If you have filizman meruba, so again we have a kasha. Our Mishnah says that the only time that it can go back to the woman, or the shliach can give it to the woman, is only if he found it will alter immediately. But over here, it's implying, as long as the husband says, yeah, I gave it to her, that's it. Now the question is, maybe that's not exactly what happened. Maybe in fact it got, if as it fell and got lost, maybe it wasn't given to her properly. So how could we say, even after the altar, that we can give her the get? And we answer similar to what we said before. It's all dependent on the probabilities. If there is caravans, so there's a chance that this belongs to someone else, and therefore it only works if he finds it will alter. However, this case that we brought down the Brisa is because there's not a lot of movement, and therefore the likelihood is very, very slim that this get belongs to someone else, and therefore you can give it to her even if it's beyond the finding right away. Now, now some say who also shehuksaku hu deloy lahadar. Also, it's only if there's a chazaka that it doesn't go back. Haina de Rabba. In other words, the second stipulation of Yosef and Shimon, that they're two people with the same name, maybe that also is the only time that we say lo lahadar, in order for her not to get it back. However, if, let's say, even if it's Shaysharis Mitsuyos, but there's not two chazaka of two people with the same name, so then we'll give it back to her there also, which is the same thing which we said like Rabbi, which means maybe he's not arguing with him. Maybe he says no. Even in a situation where there's no chazaka, we're still going to be concerned in a situation of Shaysharis Mitsuyos, which will be a machlokas, therefore, between him and Rabbi. Now, Bishlam de Rabba, Rab Zer, I can understand why Rabbi doesn't want to say Rab Zer Mastisan Ali Malay Shuye, that because he would rather ask a question from a Mishnah. Says Rashi, the Kasach the Inhu Reminhu Ahadadi, Mastisan Iker Mebraisa. So he wants to be able to establish the Iker, which is the Mishnah. Mishnah is stronger. So therefore, because of that, he wants to establish our Mishnah is talking about a situation in which there are caravans, and that's the reason why our Mishnah says only will alter. El Rab Zera, my time will Karabo. I say hold like him. So Malach Mikatani Im Amar Tenu Naisnin. It doesn't say over there the words, oh, if he said Tenu, give it. The Afilizman Maruba. Dilma Im Amar Tenu Naisin Kidekai Malon will alter. Maybe only in that situation. Maybe there is no contradiction between these Mishnahs at all, and it only works will alter. So how do you know this whole situation that Tenu was even said? It doesn't say that. We're a different answer. What happened is the witnesses said, quote, I'll get echad shel Yosef and Shimon. We don't know if there's people around. Other people. We're telling you we only signed one get in our lives with a man by that name. So even though there's 100 other people who have the exact same name, it doesn't make any difference, because after all, this is it, and we're the only ones to have this signature. So you can look at the signatures. So you have so what's the chiddush? Isrami shema shema kishma the edim kenim kamashmon. Just like we're concerned that they have similar names on the get, the man, the husband, the wife. Maybe even though I'm the only one who signed it, Boaz, but maybe there's another aide whose name is Boaz also signed. Kamashmon, that much we're not going to do. What they say is that it's not a question, because they're actually testifying, says the witnesses, that there's actually a nekev, there's a hole, and that's what a lot of times they do. For example, when I was involved in signing Gittin in Florida, so the sofa, we'd be there for the first line, because that, as we saw before, there's an inyan of being there at least for the first line. And then let's say you have to go to the bathroom, and so the get's 12 lines, so it may take him 15 more minutes to write the get, let's say. So he makes a hole on the top of a letter, not in the letter, but above it, actually piercing through the document, whatever the letter is, and then you can leave. So that is considered to be a siman muvhak. So too, and therefore it's okay. It's not going to get confused with some other document because the Adam themselves saw that that's what took place. So too, they said there's a hole on the side of a particular letter. The havili siman muvhak. That is considered to be a absolute clear sign. So therefore, because of that, you don't have to worry, even if it was found later on, you know for sure. So when it says that even after the altar it works, it's because there was a siman muvhak on it. Similar to the seifa of the Mishnah, for example, it says if there's a kli, so if there's some clear distinction, then there's no way it can get confused with anything else. But davka b'sado is ploini. It's only if it's by a particular letter. They can say it's above the letter mem, for example. Dahabli siman muvhak. It's absolute clear. Of a neck of ba'al, if they say, yeah, there's a hole, so a lot of the Gittin, we have holes, we put holes in them, because every time an aide wants to go to the bathroom, so we put a hole in the get, which takes place quite often. So therefore, that's not considered to be a siman muvhak. Lo, masafkli simanim miduraisa d'Rabbanan. Now, this is a siman, but that's only it's not on a level of siman muvhak. It's got to be more specific that you know exactly which letter it's above, and therefore it's a machlokis whether or not there's a din whether simanim or d'Oraisa d'Rabbanan, as it's brought down in Masechtas B'Motzia, because if you have an aveda, we know if it has a siman, so the person's not miyayish, and you have to give it back. However, the question is, are simanim d'Oraisa d'Rabbanan? Rashi brings down hilchach be'isser eishes ish, when it comes to the isser of a woman potentially being married, if this is not a good get, lo samchinana simanim ba'alma. We don't rely on simanim. Dilma simanim d'Rabbanan, because maybe when it comes to a simanim d'Rabbanan. However, when it comes to money, not so much of an issue. But mamaina hu dematzi rabbanan lahafkiya de hefker based on hoya hefker. There's a din hefker based on hefker. So based on has the ability for a person to take away the person's money. So even if simanim or derabbanan, will be saimich on simanim. However, we're not going to be saimich when it comes to iser eishes ish. Avol mishri isura lo matzi rabbanan akar davar min atayra. They don't have the ability to